Hey, welcome to Daily-MVS, your daily, mostly, podcast. If you are a student of Mohawk Valley Youth, or just a student in general, find yourself digging this kind of thing, tune into it. So, I listened back to episode 0, and so this is weird because I'm also recording this, so I can put little clips and stuff on YouTube or whatnot. So if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook or IGTV or anything like that, you can see that I'm holding, so I'm recording the podcast. This will be a little bit of a behind the scenes episode. I'm recording the podcast on my phone, and I'm using the headphones, and I'm kind of holding the microphone out a little bit. And that's because I listened back to the episode 0, and the first part of it, so I was laying in bed, and the first part of it, the microphone was down like this, like on my beard, just kind of sitting there, and it was like really scratching roughly, and I remembered that can have that effect when I have a beard. So then I pulled it out like this, and it seemed to fix the problem. So yeah, if you're watching the video and you're wondering why I'm like holding the microphone out like this, that's the reason why. All right, let's jump into today's episode. So I promised you guys in this episode we were going to talk about the concept. I don't remember exactly how I framed it up, but the concept of needing to have some sort of like responsibility, having something of value in your life that you're responsible for, not letting your parents and teachers or whatever, grandparents, whatever it is, do everything for you. Oh, I posted a couple days ago, from the time of the recording this, a clip or a little mini blog about Kevin McAllister from Home Alone, and about how he starts off the movie helpless, and then how he accomplishes all these things by the end of it, and how the difference was that he just didn't have a family around anymore to just do everything for him, and it forced him to be able to become more responsible and in the end more capable and grow as an individual, to the point where in the second movie, which we just watched that one, when it kind of happened again, this time now he's stuck in New York, he didn't panic. He was able to just like, and that's unrealistic, obviously, a kid surviving in New York and all that stuff, but you know, it's an exaggeration. It paints the picture that we're going with. So I do want to put a disclaimer. So I've had several conversations in the last like 6-ish days with parents and students about this topic. So I want to make it clear that this is not in direct response to any of those individual conversations. It's more as a collective. And even further back than that is something I've been talking to my wife Brandy about for a while, and a topic I've been actually discussing just for quite a while, several years now. So this isn't in direct response to like, so if you're one of those parents or students I've had a conversation with, don't think I'm then using that discussion for content. Though I have no problem doing that. I'm not like no specifics, but like, you know, because that's the whole point, is the content of this podcast will be driven by direct things that I'm interacting with you guys and your parents and stuff on, about what you guys are going through and dealing with. So yeah. So I may pull some from there, but I won't, you know, there's not going to be any specifics or anything. And this isn't directed towards any one individual. So if you are, like I said, one of those parents or students, don't feel like I then took our conversation and directly made it an episode. If I did, I would literally start off by saying, so I was having a conversation with a student this week, or I was having a conversation with a parent this week, and then jump into it on a much more micro level. But this is going to be a little more macro. Yes, most of you should be in high school, right? Micro, macro, you know, macro, big picture, micro, like little tiny, you know, small picture. So, hey, look, you're learning vocabulary as well. So this is a very beneficial podcast to you guys. Okay, so I gotta pick some fuzz off of the microphone. There we go. Let's talk about this. So this whole idea, I'm gonna start off with a quote from one of my old favorite pastors. I don't really listen to the guy much anymore, but back in the day, I was listening to 1, 2, 3 of his sermons a day. Mark Driscoll, back when he was the founding pastor of Mars Hill Church. Now he's Trinity Church, I believe, in Scottsdale, Arizona. But this is back when he was the founding pastor of Mars Hill Church, and their main campus was in, I think it was Everett, but he was up in Washington, like Seattle, Washington area. So if that wasn't his main campus, that was one of his campuses. So he used to make this comment that, and I really agree with this. And if you disagree, then I'm sorry. Then I guess we disagree. And this is going to be very old-fashioned. So for you incredibly progressive ones out there, I do apologize. This whole thing's based on biblical principles, life experience. Not the current trends, which I think we could all agree that the current way of doing things are kind of failing. We have like all-time high, suicide, depression, school shootings, all this kind of stuff. And if we're real with ourselves, it can't all be the president's fault. Depending, and I'm not even saying which president. We've had a couple presidents. People like to blame the president for everything. The president is a very powerful person, but can only do so much. And I don't think the president, especially a president who, we had our last president was in office for 8 years. Our current president's coming up on 4. That's not enough time to systematically affect and change an entire generation. So I think it's fair to say it's not 100%, you don't get a president in one way or the other and people just start going crazy. So it can be scratching at a problem that's been there, but this is overall a problem. And so I'm starting to hear even secular podcasters and industry leaders and stuff that I listen to talk about this and starting to turn back. They don't call it like biblical wisdom or biblical foundations, but a lot of it is back to like some of the old ways of certain things. Now there's crazy stuff. You used to beat kids. Kids were like at 9 years old working full time on a farm with, dangerous like stuff, 3:30 in the morning, getting up, working farms, working with animals and farm equipment. Like I'm not saying that, but there is something to be said about having responsibility. And if I can get off this rabbit trail and back to this quote, he used to say that men are like trucks. They ride better with a load in them. And what that means is when you have a truck and you're driving that truck just totally empty, the back, the tailgate, and I'm talking about a real truck, not like a little 4-foot bed, fake, whatever, I want to be cool type thing. Just get an SUV if you're gonna have a 4-foot bed. I'm talking about a real truck that has a real bed. I was half joking, but that has a real bed. I went growing up with my dad, and he had this old like 90 something, 92, 93 Ford truck, and the thing was super light on its own. So we'd be driving down the road to go to like the hardware store, and it would be super bumpy. Like every bump in the road we would feel, and it just knock us all over the road, all the little bumps and potholes if we took up like a backcountry road. And then we would fill the back of the truck up with, depending on what project we were working on, most of the time it was a large quantity of sheets of plywood, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of plywood. Sometimes it was filling the back up with cement to go home because we were going to build some sort of walkway or something. Other times it was just large amounts of 2x4s, just whatever it was. Well, we'd put like a heavy load, like we're talking several hundred pounds, 300 plus pounds, 500 plus pounds in the back of the truck. And then the way home was so much smoother because trucks were designed to carry a load. In the old days, at least. Like I know there's some now trucks, trucks are cool. Just like SUVs aren't really for off-roading necessarily anymore. But in theory, trucks were designed to pull things and to haul a load. And so when they are not doing their purpose, they're not designed just to move people around because they're really terrible at it. If you think about it, and again, I know things have kind of changed now, but historically trucks, you probably only had a single cab, which fit really comfortably like 2 people. You could throw a third person in there. You could get a van or even a car could hold 4 comfortably, up to 5. You get a minivan or something, you could hold 7 or 8 people. So trucks weren't designed to carry people around. They're designed to move items and things around and carry and pull weight. So it, when it's not fulfilling its purpose, it's not being used for what it was designed for, it would be bumpy and not the smoothest ride. But you fill that thing up, or you put a trailer or something on that thing, and you get some weight behind it, and man, that thing would come alive, and it's now fulfilling its purpose, and it's functioning better. I believe that men are like that, and people in general, but we're specifically kind of talking men here. When we just kind of float through life, and we're shielded from everything, it's this whole, like the culture of, I know it's very cliche, so I'm not trying to jump into cliches, but the whole 8th place trophy type thing, when we're constantly being rewarded without actual, just to be fair, without any actual effort put into it, when we're like, so here's a few examples. Like, it wasn't that long ago that there was a teacher was fired because she gave a student a 0 on an assignment that he or she didn't do, and the school put in a policy where they have to give them at least half credit even if they don't do anything. I don't understand how, like, I don't get half a paycheck when I don't show up to work. That'd be nice. You get a job, never show up to work, and bring home half your salary. That'd be great. I'll go get 8 of those jobs and bring home half of all those salaries. I'd be rich. It'd be fantastic. That's not the way the world works. My daughter played soccer, and she loved it. She absolutely loved it. And she, as much as she loved it, was terrible. And she got an award at the end. Now, and as a parent, I was happy, and it wasn't like an award for like being amazing at it. It was definitely was an award. It was something to do with like, she brought value to the team, or her personality, something like that. So I appreciated what they're doing. And if it was, so we let it go, type thing. But if it was an actual like, woohoo, winner type thing, we would have had to be like, well, had to have a conversation with her. And we actually have had to have conversations with her because she enjoyed it so much, and because she was given a medal, she went around for a while telling people, I'm really good at soccer. I got a medal. But the problem is she can't even run. And I'm not putting my daughter down. My daughter is amazingly talented at 99 things, but soccer ain't one. And so my son is a runner. He can run, for fun. I took him down to the church the other day to help me with something, or set up a baptismal for the help. So I went to help pastor, and he came to help me. And after we set it up, pastor had a meeting, so we volunteered to stay and kind of watch it so that it didn't overflow, and shut the water off when it needed to be shut off. And he just for fun starts running laps around the church 2 different times. And he just goes and runs 3 laps around. We have a big auditorium. So he goes and runs. It's like probably equal to running around a gym. So he does 3 laps around a gym just for fun. And then a little bit later, he goes and does it again, does 6 laps total, just because it's fun to him. He's a good runner. My daughter is not. So we've, over time, as she started trying to make life, and now obviously she's young. She's currently 11 at the time some of this stuff is happening. She's 9 years old, 10 years old. She's trying to make life decisions, however small they are, based on the fact that she thinks she's amazing at soccer. So she's challenging people to races because she's I played soccer, and soccer is mostly running, and she's trying to we should start up a soccer team and we're gonna dominate, and she's all these things, and we finally, I had to pull her aside. I'm like, Lily, you're not very good at soccer. I know you loved it, and that's great. You can play it as much as you want, but don't ever expect that you're going to be super amazing. You can practice and get better, but it's not your thing. You're never going to be playing professionally. We can tell, I know you're young and you could really develop. Maybe you'll hit puberty, and this was back when she was younger. It's maybe when you hit puberty, you'll become more athletic. Probably not, because you seem to have picked up your mother's kind of sportsmanship. I mean, I say your mother's. I wasn't much better. I at least was coordinated. But, it's probably not going to happen for you. I think your little brother got the kind of athletic genes in the family. And so we didn't crush her. We didn't tell her she's bad or terrible. And at first she kind of didn't really believe us. And then I think maybe she ran a couple races and kind of realized that, oh, you know what? I kind of always lose. Even to little short kids with stocky legs. Yeah, I'm not great at this. And she's realized, and so because of that, she's been able to go and put her time, talent, and interest into other areas that she's really good at, and is doing phenomenally well in, to the point where other people look up to her and I want to be like Lily in this area. She's so amazing at this thing, and that she's been able to really strive in. And so for her particularly, it's been, in the arts, where we had an amazing program at our last church, and Miss Alma was the teacher, and she coached her and helped her, and Lily's gone on to just do phenomenal in the acting aspect. And it could seem harsh telling her that, but the whole idea is having realistic expectations. I've kind of gotten off of topic here. I've kind of switched to another subject which is similar, just as important, but that idea of so to bring it back in, you've got to try different things. You've got to but you also have to be okay to not be good at certain things, and you're never going to find that out if you're never getting involved in things. So it would have been easy for her to say, well, I don't want to do soccer because I don't want to make that commitment. I don't want to put myself out there. Or maybe she did soccer and then come to find out she's not great at it. And so then she's like, well, I'm not going to do this singing, acting, dancing class because I was bad at soccer. And so I might be bad at this too. So I'm just going to do nothing and I'm going to spare myself. That would lead to unhappiness. And that is the central idea of this episode, is when you are not involved in something, when you don't have any kind of responsibility, when you're not doing anything, no one's counting on you, and you're not connected to people in any meaningful way, you are going to be unhappy. You are going to be depressed. It's going to happen eventually. Even if you're an introvert, even introverts at some point need people. The whole part of being an introvert is that they need to get away from people to recharge. It doesn't mean they hate people, right? Like we all know, like the Scrooge McDuck, Disney Plus is like dominating my mindset. Scrooge, from the Christmas Carol. We all know that idea of like the miser or the hermit, but like we don't know that many in real life, right? Like, and even the ones that we maybe can think of, they normally have at least one friend or two friends, or have pets because they're trying to still have some sort of connection. Or you may be thinking, well, I know one, and they're like the meanest, most miserable person. Yeah, that goes back to proving my point. We're designed for connection. We're designed, like God created us, not just to be one-offs on our own and independent. And we're supposed to be dependent upon God and dependent on each other. And part of that is getting involved in things and having responsibility. So we live our lives just disconnected, not wanting to put ourselves out there, trying to avoid embarrassment and avoid hassle and stuff like that. At some point, we're going to wake up and we're going to not really enjoy our lives that much. And if we're not doing anything worthy of admiration, if we're not doing anything to make ourselves proud, at some point we are going to have a low self-esteem and a low self-worth. And at the end of the day, it's not a matter of, well, just feel better about yourself. You're awesome. Okay, now we all have value. We're all created. God created all of us. We're all equally valuable in that sense. But if you're struggling with like, oh, I don't really feel like I matter, are you doing anything that matters? And if not, that's probably your problem. If you're not doing anything that matters, it makes sense that you feel like you don't matter. And so I know that it's a big thing right now for you guys to feel, like, and I don't know how popular it still is, but this whole thing of like, oh, I'm trash. Oh, you've seen a picture of a trash can and being like, oh, that's me right there. This whole idea. Now, I know part of that was just in jest and like, it was a popular thing to do and y'all jump on the bandwagon. But if you're actually feeling that way, if you're actually feeling like you're trash or you're worthless or you're valuable or not valuable, look at your life. Are you doing anything that is valuable and that is worthwhile? And if not, I encourage you to get involved somewhere. And it can be as simple as, getting involved in stuff at school, getting involved with more involved with your family, putting that effort in. Are you do you feel lonely? And if so, are you around other people? Are you getting involved? Are you contributing? And I know, here's the thing, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a therapist. So if you have actual depression, you're like, no, I'm around people and I still feel so alone. I'm not like necessarily talking to you. I'm not qualified to have that conversation with you. I'm talking about the average kid who is feeling this way because their lack of any kind of action, any kind of, or just not really been involved in stuff. So I'd encourage you to definitely try to jump in. One great thing is if you're listening to this, you're probably involved in a youth group. You're probably involved in my youth group, or at least come to it. I highly suggest you plug in. That's why we're launching these ministry teams. And you may be like, well, there's not really a ministry team I like right now. You know what? Find an area to get involved in. You may be like, I don't really like any of the ministry teams. Well, one of the ministry teams is fine arts. And so that covers like literally almost everything in fine arts. But if you're like, I'm not really into the whole fine arts thing at all. I don't know if you could hear that, but my little son just got up and just went like running across. It was really funny. It sounded like there's an emergency upstairs or something. So anyways, find something to get involved in. If you're like, well, I don't really like this or that, or I don't like any of this media or arts or drama or singing or any of this kind of stuff, and that's what all your ministry teams are for, there's other ways to get involved. You can, come talk to me, come talk to one of the leaders. There's other stuff to do. We'll be expanding as we go on, but a lot of times too, we build these teams out as far as needs are based. So as there's need and stuff. If you're more in like a sports kid and whatnot, like we have need for that too. Like, yeah, jump in, like, especially as spring rolls back around, like we have so much more opportunity for that kind of stuff. Okay, it's almost 20 minutes. I'm rambling at this point. So let me just summarize this by saying that's a great way to summarize, is not be able to find your words. Let me summarize this by saying, scratch that, reverse it, by saying that just if you're in that place where you're just feeling just lost, you're feeling, not valuable, maybe even as far as feeling like depressed, I highly encourage you to get involved. I can tell you, and I don't have really the time. I mean, I guess I have the time. I could make this a 3-hour podcast if I wanted to, but for the sake of keeping this short, I'll just allude to, I won't go into details, but the couple of times probably the 3 times I can think of in my life where I would say that I felt depressed were like on a large scale. I don't mean like for a few days or a few weeks, but like long period of time, like months or years at a time, where I felt like I was depressed. Every single one of those times leads back to a time in my life when I wasn't really involved in something. Maybe I was on the surface, but I wasn't connected and contributing in a way that was using my gifts and my talents and my interests, and I'm making me feel like I was making a difference. Like, you could be like, oh, I'm involved in stuff, and it's like, oh, I set up chairs at the Y every week. And so you could still have a sense of like, oh, I'm doing good, but there's a certain thing to be had, and in later episodes I'll go into this idea of calling and what you were created for and all that kind of stuff. When you're like when you're doing that, you're like firing on all cylinders there. You're really connecting with what you're interested, you're passionate, you're talented, and you feel like what you're doing a good job at it. It's really hard to be in a bad place when you're hitting all those. And again, I'm talking about like the average case. I'm not talking about if there is more going on. I just want to say one more time, like, don't take this advice and be like, oh, I'm going to just drop all my medicine, all my meds that my doctor's given me, and stop going to therapy, and I'm just going to take Pastor Jared's advice. That's not what I'm talking about, because I'm talking about in a very general sense here. So yeah, like, I encourage you to get involved in something. I would start off with your church. I know that when I was your age, I got involved with youth leadership, and I enjoyed it, and it was good, and it gave me a sense of purpose and whatnot, and I was good at it, and I contributed, and it was good, but it wasn't so okay. I'm saying it a lot now. So it was good. I don't want to put that down at all. But what was like even better and was amazing is when I plugged into the media team. And when our media director left, my pastor asked me to take that over and even converted it from media director to media minister and added a ministry aspect to it. Man, I came alive. I mean, I was down at the church until, like, I obviously had a license. At this point, I think I was 17, 18 years old. I was down at the church until 3, 4 in the morning. Like, it was back when Brandy and I were dating, and so like I'd get up in the morning, I'd go to college. My first class was like a 7:30, 8 o'clock class, so I'd leave the house, by 7 o'clock, or get to class, go to school, get out of school, go to work. I hated my job. School was all right. Like, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I'd go to work. I hated work. I worked at this store called Christian Connection, and it was not a great place to work. And then I would get off work, and then I'd go over to Brandy's house, and I'd spend a couple hours with her, and we'd, I'd be there, have dinner with her family, kind of hang out with her for a few hours, and then I'd leave. And on my way home, I wouldn't go home. I would go to the church, and I had an office, and I'd work on media projects. I'd edit, and I would work on stuff, and the next thing I knew, it was like 2:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. I'm like, oh shoot, my dad wakes up in like a half hour to go to work, and he's gonna see I'm not there. So I'd have to like get in the car and run home, and so they wouldn't worry about me. And I just loved it. Like, that's what I was doing. And it wasn't like, you could look at that another way and be like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Like, you were like barely out of high school, and you were working all those hours, and that's bad, and that's like illegal, and blah, 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 all these things. But at the end of the day, like, I loved it, and I felt more alive than I had it, anything else. And so I really encourage you to find your thing like that, to really find what, like, your passion, your calling, if it were, and get involved in it. And you don't have to be old. to be able to figure that out. And if you are younger and you haven't figured that out, just start with, there's two things you can start with. One, with the need, and that was me with the youth leadership. And again, I enjoyed it. Like, I loved it. I have great memories from it. So I'm not saying like, oh, it wasn't very good. And then I got into the media stuff. Like, I enjoyed it. It was great. And if I'd never gotten the media stuff, it would have still been a great experience. So one, look for need. Is your church or your youth ministry, is there a need that they have where you can get involved in? And two, what are your passions and your interests? Because if there was an opening for, I don't know, like a maintenance ministry, and I was getting involved in that and like learning how to like fix things around the church and build little things and do the electrical and do the plumbing, I would have gotten a certain level of satisfaction out of that, and definitely had some pride out of, you know, my participation there. But I wouldn't have like come alive like I did with the media stuff. So if media is not your thing and you get involved in the media team, you're gonna feel good that you're helping out and contributing, but it's not going to be that like end all be all thing for you. So if you can find the need in the church that intersects your interests and your passions, that's probably a winning combination. All right, guys, I'm going to sign off. This conversation definitely went a different direction than I was expecting. So, but I think it's good. All right, I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, I don't know, I should say something about like, you know, following or something like that. So I don't know. I'm not going to tell you to do anything. It's Sunday night, so you guys will probably listen to this later in the week. You just have a blessed day. You guys, I love you. See you tomorrow. Well, you'll hear me tomorrow. I won't see you tomorrow. You'll hear me tomorrow. All right, good night.